I'm good. How are you? She wants to know where.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, yeah. That's too many people over there.
See, you know what? She gave me the bad chair.
No, that chair's good.
You okay?
I'm fine. You're really good.
Let's switch out.
No, that was sit down. Yes, I did. You switched it. That chair's done.
Okay, you guys. Get up off the floor and let's go. That's right.
I think this was broke from the beginning.
Me too. Because it's all
But it hasn't had any.
Well, don't put it over there by me.
It was weak.
from the beginning, since January.
Okay.
It's always, yeah. It's always leaned this way.
I don't think anybody's been in it for it.
You good, cigar? You okay?
Yes.
Okay.
You can't represent.
No, I can't take any overt action against the city, but if the price is right, I'll give it up.
Donnell can represent.
Yeah, Donnell can represent.
Everybody got a price.
By emotional distress. That's it. Emotional distress. Y'all trying to set me up. I'm glad we weren't on the TV.
Ready?
Are we on the air already?
It's just a community. I mean, it's just a committee meeting. Yeah, it's just a committee meeting. Okay. I'm ready.
30 seconds. But they can hear it.
How you doing, sir? Good, good.
So I take my extra.
Here.
Yes.
Okay, good evening. The Finance Committee meeting for March 12th is now called to order. On this evening's agenda are three ordinances. CPO 2020-12, which is an ordinance approving the reorganization and renaming of various executive departments of the City of Gary and amending salary and operating budgets in connection therewith. CPO 2020-15, an ordinance authorizing the city to make a temporary interfund loan to the Fire Pension Fund and Police Pension Fund. And CPO 2020-16, an ordinance amending the budget for the Lake County Fetal Infant Mortality Review Grant. We're going to take them in the order that they're on the agenda. I hope everyone has an agenda. Present this evening is Councilwoman Ty Atkins from the 4th District, Councilman William Godwin from the 1st District, Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell from the 5th District, and Councilman Ron Brewer from the 3rd District. And I'm Mary Brown, Chairman of the Finance Committee, and our attorney, our board legal advisor, Attorney Renzer Williams, and the mayor is here. Mayor Jerome Prince is here. So we are ready to begin, and we will start with 2020-12. Ms. Colvin, okay, thank you.
Good evening, council members.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
CPO 2020-12 is an ordinance that creates and reorganizes several executive departments of the city and makes budget changes in order to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of city operations. Several municipal code sections are amended in this ordinance, namely the Public Works section of the code, Code Enforcement, Finance Department, Public Services, and Innovation and Technology. Additionally, the budget changes that are proposed are as follows. The title, the position in the mayor's office, formerly or currently constituent services, is changed to Deputy Chief of Staff. There's a creation of a special police position and supportive services at $34,000. There's a change in status for the supportive services manager position in the fire department from full-time to part-time. There's a change in title in the Commerce Department from Chief Policy Administrator to Executive Director of Community Investment with a salary at $70,000. There's a change from Operations Manager to Executive Director for Code Enforcement. There's a change from Code Zoning Inspector to Inspector 2 in the Commerce Department. The elimination of the salary of the Planning Director at $60,000. There's a creation of a Data Analyst position at $52,000. There's a change of title from a Chief Technology Officer to a Chief Innovation Technology Officer. There's a change of title from the Director of Public Works to the Executive Director of Public Works. There's an elimination of a Building Superintendent at $52,000. The elimination of a Communications Director at $75,000. And a transfer of $45,000 of funding from the the Communications Director position to repairs and equipment, which would leave $30,000 in professional services. Both the Planning Director position and the Communication Director position will be handled contractually. These changes are revenue neutral, and there's no increase in the overall city budget. I'll entertain any questions.
Have any questions, anyone? We had a question about the Communications Director. He doesn't live in Gary.
No, he doesn't.
Okay, and that's problematic for us.
That's a contractual position.
It's a contractual position.
Right. Oh, that's what we're proposing.
Pardon?
That is what we are proposing.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Okay, I just,
go ahead.
so, Ms. Colvin, I think during the last meeting that we had, we also asked for copies of the contracts so was that submitted for review to the
Yes,
council?
I did submit.
Okay. Did you, colleagues?
I submitted everything you asked for.
Okay.
The Planning Director contract and the Communications Director contract.
Okay, and I think the resumes as well, the summary that you just prepared for us, I think that was also a request. You submitted that as well to council?
The resume of what, I'm sorry?
We also asked for the resumes.
No, I didn't hear that request, but I can certainly get it for you.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was a resume for the community investment role was asked for because there was a question in terms of the reasoning for the increase in budget for salary for that role, and if there was some additional qualifications that that person had to justify the increase. And then also, I think the summary that you just gave us was requested as well, in terms of a summarized amount, in terms of what the changes were. So was that submitted as well to council?
This summary was not, but I certainly can give it to you. It's a matter of me just copying it.
Yeah, okay. So I think those were like the three things that we had requested. And if the other ones that you said that were submitted to council, I didn't receive it. I'm not sure if the colleagues have received that information.
I believe I submitted it to your office manager for her to distribute to the council members.
You know what date?
Not offhand, I don't.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I just wanted to speak to a couple of points, and, while we understand the council's concern and the desire to have as many people employed who live in the city of Gary, we also should take into account the job that these persons who have been employed are doing. And in addition to that, we should absolutely take into account the considerable amount of savings that's involved with establishing those two positions as contractual positions. Primarily the Director of Communications. In that instance, the prior Director of Communications salary, as we reported, the one that was eliminated, was paying $75,000 or was listed at $75,000. But when you include the benefits that are associated with it also, that makes that position come out to a little bit more than $105,000. In this instance, the gentleman is working and he's available, he's putting out proper notifications in a professional and timely manner, and the salary is $30,000 without any benefits, and I would just certainly hope that the council takes that into consideration. Secondly, as it relates to the resumes, as the chief of staff suggested, we'll provide anything that this council asks for, but I think the inference, or at least the suggestion is that you want to make sure that they're qualified for the position, and quite frankly, we feel that that's the administrative decision. We certainly wouldn't want to place people in positions who can't perform in the job, and in this instance, both of the gentlemen that we've identified for these positions are more than capable and more than qualified for the positions, and that's what we do as a responsible administration. And to that point, both of them, from my perspective, go beyond the call of duty in order to fill in some gaps that exist, on the administrative side. And we've realized enhancements and improvements in the delivery of service since then. And so I would ask respectfully that this council approve this budget as is so that we can continue the delivery of service in an efficient manner and that we can move on to greater situations that we all have to deal with. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
3 points. Number one, 311 on the media fund budget shows that $75,000 are being moved from the job position to professional services. Now, there was already $30,000 in professional services, and you indicated at our last meeting that the intention was not to pay him $30,000, but $60,000 through a contract. And so I'm wondering, why is it that we're increasing professional services from $30,000 to $105,000? If we're only intending to pay him $60,000, why wouldn't we just add $30,000 in that line number 311?
And I think that is what I was addressing when I mentioned the $45,000. $30,000 would go into that line item, which would leave $45,000 because the other $30,000 is already encumbered in a 6-month contract. So the $45,000 will go into repairs to equipment.
Okay, so we're moving that
Yes,
into...
and that's an amendment that has to be made.
Okay,
That's an amendment?
Yes.
because it's not currently
Based
under...
on the copy that I gave at the last meeting,
At the last
the
meeting.
$75,000 was being fully moved to the professional services line item.
And that's the
What we're
copy I
saying
still
is-
have.
Right, and
Yeah.
what we're saying is that we're going to amend that to make the change to $45,000 to repairs to equipment, $30,000 professional services.
And Madam Chair, if I could add to what the Chief of Staff is saying, the moving of the $45,000 to repairs and equipment was our indication that we're listening to this body, and to that extent, we moved it to a fund that would be utilized by both the administration and the council for repairs to media equipment, because we understand the importance of us both being able to have access to get the message out.
All right.
Okay.
The second point I wanted to ask about that is that, and the only reason I expressed concern, and I think others did as well, about the residency is because I think it's a slippery slope. We start making exceptions. It's not fair that some department heads are required by our very own ordinance to live in the city, and we're going to, depending on who it is and what we want at any given time, make exceptions. So I'm prepared to agree to this if my colleagues are prepared to scrap the residency ordinance. You can't have it both ways. So either we say you can live in Maine if you want to, fly into our airport every day and work here, and that's fine. But I just don't think it's fair to say that you, Ms. Copeland, must live in the city of Gary until we make your position contractual, but this other gentleman doesn't have to. Now, I don't doubt that there are savings by making this a contractual position and reducing the expenses that come with that. But I don't say this just because I'm in real estate. I say this because any community that has pride in itself wants to encourage as many people as possible to live in it. Mr. Reeves understands that. He worked for years in Chicago. You have to live in that city in order to be an employee, certainly a department head in that city. So I would just say that I'm prepared to support it, but I would also be ready to have a repeal of our residency ordinance.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes.
and I guess I should, if I could, I'll address it to the chair and perhaps the councilman will answer. I'm not sure which position he's speaking about.
Communications director.
So that's not a department head, sir?
It's not?
No.
But is it covered by our residency ordinance?
No.
It's not?
No.
So the director of communications does not fall under the residency ordinance for the city of Gary?
It's a part-time position, sir.
As it stands in our current 2020 budget?
It's a part-time position, sir.
Who said it was a part-time position?
That's what we're attempting to do with this
Yeah, that's your
restructuring
proposal,
ordinance,
but the
correct.
budget was approved last year for 2020, and the budget has it as a full-time position.
Well, the only thing I would say to that is certainly that was the budget that this body passed, and it was advanced by the previous administration. But I think that it's safe to say that at the very minimum, there were several inefficiencies in that last budget, and what we're attempting to do is to establish efficiencies in order to run the city properly.
I have a question for Attorney Williams. When this ordinance was passed, I obviously was not here. What was the intent and what's the requirement of the ordinance as it relates to full and part-time employees, excluding police and fire, we know, of the city of Gary?
I can't speak to the intent of
The
Mayor
plain
Councilman
language
Wilson.
then,
I'm sorry?
the plain language of the ordinance.
Well, the ordinance is clear. If it's a full-time department head position, the current residency ordinance requires that the individual be a resident. However, keep in mind, in that same ordinance, it gives the executive the ability to come to this council to seek a waiver. The mayor would simply have to demonstrate the person's qualifications and the need. That was written into the existing residency ordinance because we anticipated from time to time there would be a department head where the mayor thought their expertise lended more than the fact that they simply didn't reside in Gary. So that was the intent of the ordinance. I can't speak to the mayor's intent when she passed the budget, or when she asked you, this body, to pass the budget.
And for my own clarification, part-time employees are exempt
Of course.
from the residency ordinance.
Absolutely.
Right, we're just saying full-time employees, and not just department heads, but any full-time employee of the city of Gary, except for police and fire, have to live in the city, right?
My recollection is that it was limited to department heads. That was a, I'd have to read it, but I
I
remember
thought
going
it
back
was
and
broader
forth,
than
and it was
that.
the
It is
department head.
department heads. It was department
Yeah.
heads.
Okay.
But my concern is, I understand that. My concern is, do we have anybody who lives in Gary who could do that job? That's my concern. I mean, that's my concern.
May I say something too?
Pardon?
I would like to just say this. I think the executive has the statutory authority
He
to
does.
determine whether a position is needed in the budget or not, and whether or not they can engage through a professional services contract, any services that the executive thinks that it should have. With that being said, if a position was eliminated, I'm not just talking about communications director, I'm talking about any position was eliminated from the budget, that would be the executive's right to do that, I would think, based on the law. And if that executive decided that they needed some services within that category, they would have the right to contract for them. I think that was what the intent was here, not to debate or talk about whether or not you need a department head, but whether or not you need a communication service.
Madam Chair?
I understand that. Yes.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go. There's another meeting down the hall in the boardroom, but I wanted to make sure that I made my presence and myself available this evening to answer as many questions as I can, but I'm completely confident in the Chief of Staff's ability to continue. So if I may be excused, thank you.
Thank you. That will be
I have
my
a quick question about this residency ordinance. I'm looking at it, and it says that whereas said ordinance established residency requirements for all officers, this is actually from 1976, but I'm saying this, it quotes the original ordinance from 1976, but I don't think it doesn't amend it in a way that changes.
I don't believe it was to.
It wasn't limited to department
I think we
heads.
only excluded police and fire. And
Yeah.
president.
In fact, I'm going to read it.
Yeah, that was my
Last
It-
time we signed off on it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it said, I'm going to read it for the record. And in fact, I'm going to read all of it, if that's okay. I think this is an
I'm fine.
important
Go ahead.
matter. Whereas City of Gary Municipal Ordinance Number 5188 was enacted on or about October 20th, 1976, and whereas said ordinance established residency requirements for all officers and employees who are employed by a city department, agency, or federal program, and whereas said ordinance required said employees to be residents of the city and domicile within the corporate limits of the city during the time and term of employment, and whereas all police officers employed by the city shall continue to comply with the residency requirements set forth in the Police Civil Service Commission ordinance number, and whereas all firefighters employed by the city shall continue to comply with the residency requirements set forth in the Fire Civil Service Commission ordinance, and now therefore, Section 2394 of the Gary City Code is hereby amended to read as follows. The residency requirement shall be strictly required for those employed after November 1, 2016. This applies to all departments, including the city clerk and city court. If the city clerk, city judge, or mayor cannot identify a city resident or an applicant willing to become a city resident as a condition of employment, then the city clerk, city judge, or mayor must appear before the executive session of the Common Council for consideration of a residency waiver. The factors that the Common Council will apply when considering a residency waiver include, but are not limited to, whether the position was posted and advertised on the city's website and or any other outlets, whether the position was posted and advertised for at least 30 days prior to the request for a residency waiver, whether the city clerk, city judge, or mayor participated in community outreach programs to encourage citizens to consider a career in municipal government, pre-employment testing data, availability of a non-resident who possesses unique and valuable skills to the office requesting the residency waiver. So I don't see any language that specifies department head. It is any employee, and I don't even see anything making a difference between full or part-time employees. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear about this residency ordinance. Now, and I don't contest that the mayor can propose, right, changes, but obviously we're being brought here and asked to agree to those
Right.
changes. So we have a role to play in that.
Either, Councilman, what I said before about us being able to eliminate a position and to contract out, if that is what we want, some portion of services that might relate to a former position. And I think that's what's going on here.
I believe the problem of it, the whole thing in a nutshell is, did we do any type of reach out to see if anyone outside the city of Gary is qualified to do this job before we outsource to someone outside the
Yeah,
city?
that would be my concern
Yes.
as well.
That's not something that I would answer. I would leave that to the mayor.
Okay. I believe that's one of the biggest problems there. What was the process for us to get to this point where we had to outsource and grab someone from the outside to come inside to do the job that probably someone inside the city of Gary could do? Are we getting rid of the planning, the city planner out of the budget?
The city planner is another contractual position.
So we moving that from
Is anyone
a
in that
salary
position?
to,
There's a contract. That's one
He
of the
can.
contracts I sent to the council.
He came to the planning meeting.
so he's on contract now then?
Yes.
Okay. What is his amount there?
What is the, what is the
Yes,
amount?
yes.
60,000.
60,000?
Is he a citizen of Gary?
Yes.
There's no extra from anywhere else, any other,
There's no,
no extra income coming from anywhere else, from the
No.
plan or anything? Okay.
just from that one budget.
So what was he making before? What's the difference in salary from him being on contract?
The budgeted salary was $70,000.
$70,000.
The contract is $60,000.
Okay.
So what are we gonna do with that 10,000 if he?
Well, if you
gets a
recall,
contract?
when I gave a listing of the changes in that department, there are a number of changes in that department. If you recall that back in 2019, when the Commerce Department was reorganized, there were a number of positions that were changed.
Okay.
And some of them, under this reorganization, have been reinstated because we can't operate without them.
Okay. I have a question about the position that was at the fire department that we talked about the last time. That one is still on here,
That's still in the budget.
and we didn't find a resident or a retired fireman from Gary,
We're not with these qualifications.
not with these
Which one?
qualifications.
What position is that?
And I can provide that resume too, when I provide you with the
Okay. Okay.
So, another question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
The mayor was saying there is no change to the bottom line, but
Right.
in reality, there is some changes to the bottom line because some people that we removed out of positions, you removed them out, but you couldn't fill someone into those slots there until they were paid out of their time. And we did fill certain positions inside the budget.
The budget itself doesn't change, and I think that's what we're saying. I'm not sure if I'm following what you're saying about paying out.
Okay, if you take general service, you have an employee there, and I won't call the name, but you had an employee there where you remove. Someone was
Most of
put.
these positions, if they were vacant, have been vacant for some time. So those kind of payout issues have already been resolved. I think that person left in 2019.
No.
The last planning director left in 2019.
Yeah.
So if you're following what I'm saying, these individuals probably were paid out of the 2019 budget. Their payouts, I mean. So in 2020, when we started the 2020 budget, these positions were vacant.
So if you take the park superintendent, park superintendent was eliminated,
Right.
correct? So we put someone else there.
Right, which is like just having somebody new start in that position.
Was there a time frame that you had that that person was still getting paid from the city?
In both of those, in both the Public Works Department, which is the department that the new director moved from, and the Park Department position, department, both of those departments have other compensation line items, and they were paid out, their payout came out of those existing budgets.
So you
So
said,
in other words, the salary slide itself wasn't impacted.
I'm trying to follow that.
So in the budgets that you passed, just say the 2019, it doesn't matter, either one. Generally, there's a salary line item, and then there are other salary categories. One of them is other compensation. Sometimes out of other compensation comes overtime. It may be some other stipend that you might need to pay an employee. If there are dollars in those line items, the other compensation line item, they can be used to make payouts.
So you say you just pull the dollars from somewhere
Yes.
else to,
Yes, so that a new director can go directly into the slot without impacting or being impacted by a previous payout. That's what happened here.
okay. And you talked about the reorganization in the building department, about putting some things back in place that
Yes.
we took out. Can you take us through what that would look like?
Well,
Because I know we
at
had
one
got a
point, they had a code zoning inspector that was in that budget, and that prevented, I think, a sixth code enforcement officer. They also had put into that budget a couple of positions from environmental affairs, and in the environmental affairs director, I think at the last council meeting, came in and reorganized her budget to include at least one of those individuals to go back into her fees. They'll be paid from the fees that she collects. So there'll be another ordinance that comes that reinstates that code enforcement officer for the first district. So that's one of the changes that will occur. There was a code inspector 2 position that had been in the commerce budget that was eliminated. We're putting that back. That's part of this. So there are a couple of other things that impact planning, I think, that will come back to you from the redevelopment department. So most of the stuff that was actually in that 2019 reorganization, there are only a couple of things that are going to really stay in place because they impacted the operations of the departments too much, and we really couldn't operate the way it was set up. So we're putting some of those positions back.
So no savings at all, just reorganization.
We were looking at a revenue neutral situation, and that's what we have. We're not increasing the budget, but we're not decreasing it either.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, anybody else have any questions?
Can we get some more clarification on is the media department, proposed media department changes? I know we had talked about changing who the media department personnel would be reporting to. Is any of that in this? I know that we talked about it.
Right.
That's not in this.
No.
Okay, because I didn't see it. I just wanted to make sure. Is that intended to be part of the realignment?
Of the budget? No. That
Okay.
just becomes one of his responsibilities.
And what's the plan to propose that? Or how the assumption, right, or the assumption I had was that the administration was going to come and ask us to change the reporting arrangement between the IT.
And I think we kind of did. That was, in fact, the way that it has been done for many years.
Mm-hmm.
I was not aware you expected a budget change because we didn't need one.
Because currently the director, assuming that we don't change the director of communications to a contractual position, that, please correct me if I'm wrong, Councilman Brewer, there are folks on our staff who do report to the director of communications, as well as the council office. Isn't there's a dual
Yes.
reporting?
Right, and that's why we proposed that that person be the IT director.
So if we don't approve moving the communications director, are you abandoning that notion of having the IT director to be the
No.
person?
That arrangement is working right now.
So you're saying that our city council staff, or our part of this, has folks who are reporting to the IT director?
Yes.
And we have...
Well, let me make this clarification. Your city council staff has always reported to your city council officials.
Okay.
We've always worked together. That doesn't change.
Okay.
And that's what the IT director position is just intended to continue.
And on I can't find the contract. Was that emailed to me or to...
I believe it was emailed to Vanessa. If
Okay.
I don't have my phone, I will look for it now.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind, I think some of us, if you can forward it to me,
Absolutely.
all right, that would be good, or maybe I think to the committee.
Okay.
Okay. That way we can, if we have questions, discuss it.
Any more questions about 2012? Anybody? Questions or comments? Anybody in the public? Okay,
So,
that is,
Councilman Brown, just want to go through just a little something real quick.
pardon?
Just want to go through real quick. So in the mayor's office, the deputy chief of staff, constituent services is no longer be needed. That's been eliminated completely, right?
There's a change in title. A lot of those actual responsibilities will be handled by that person, but they have additional responsibilities.
So the new deputy chief of staff would do the duties of the constituent services?
She's been doing them, yes,
Okay. But she will have the title as deputy chief of staff?
because she has other responsibilities as well.
Okay. And that's the only other change in the mayor's?
Yes.
And if we just can go through real quick and just talk about the changes. Supportive services,
Yes.
what is the changes there?
That's the special police position that is being requested, or we're creating a new special police position in supportive service. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes,
Yes.
special police position.
And I can,
Because it's not highlighting
even why,
anything like
yeah,
this.
I can actually give you a copy of this very quickly before you leave.
Okay, okay. Come back to it then?
Okay?
Okay.
So is there a way you can send that contract to us while we're having this meeting?
Yes, it's just
Okay.
more, I also have to talk over the next ordinance.
Uh-oh. Can we give
We're
her some time to do
reading it,
that?
so
Because some of
I'll
us
do
may
it.
have questions about
About
the contract that they've,
for the
communications.
communication director.
If you go to the next one, just come back. Yeah.
You wanna,
She's got to do both of them, so if she
Yeah.
could maybe have a minute to,
I'm sorry.
well, we can go back to it, I guess, at the end of the meeting. Okay,
so what do you want me to do?
unless we move to 16,
Yeah.
We can
So we
move
move
to
to
16.
16, Madam
Yes.
Chair. and
that's
then-
what we'll do.
Yes, please.
All right.
Okay, 2015.
16.
16.
16, so that way give her a chance to get the information for us.
Okay.
She's probably presenting that too.
I think that's somebody else.
No,
Is that-
someone else. You're not presenting 16, are you? Yes. Oh, you're presenting, okay, yes. So that's what was that.
So what, you want me to just let him, I don't know what's next, because mine was 12, so what's the next number?
15.
It's 15, but we're going to go to 16 and give you a
Okay.
second, and so we'll come back to 12 and 15.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, hi. I'm Risa Ratney, and I am back here again because there was a change in the budget. I believe the original budget was passed back in November. I don't really remember. But we've made a change. And you know what? I can kind of give an overview because everybody was not here the last time we went through this. So if you'd like, I can give an overview of the program that we're working on.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm with the Northwest Indiana Health Department Cooperative, and the City of Gary serves as the fiscal agent for the cooperative. It's a public health entity, and my role is looking at causes and issues around infant mortality. The grant that we're talking about is from the state of Indiana. Indiana has one of the worst infant mortality rates in the nation, and the governor is really committed to making a difference with that. And one of the ways that we're doing that is looking...
Are you speaking into the mic?
Oh, okay. It's a little far
Okay.
from me, but I can speak up.
Okay.
One of the ways that we're looking at doing that is doing what is considered a review of our infant deaths. Fetal infant mortality review is kind of a public health response to infant mortality, in that we will be taking a look at the infants that have died in our area here in Lake County. So we do that by looking at the medical records of those infants that have passed away. We also do a maternal interview where we try to talk with the mother as well. So to do the work, we have engaged a nurse that would do the actual abstracting of the charts. Once we get that information, what we do is we have two teams of people. We have a clinical team to do a case review, as well as a community action team. The case review team is made up of physicians, mental health professionals, social workers, and then the community action team is made up of pretty much the same people, as well as other community leaders, so that we can look at if there are any system issues or any things that we are lacking, like community resources that could improve the birth outcomes, and just overall improve life for women and children. So, what has changed, though, with the budget is basically the way that I would be compensated. So initially, the council approved the budget for personnel items. So I would be moving from like an employee, but it's like part-time, to an independent contractor. So since that was done, then Ms. Hayes said I needed to come back with a change in the budget. The bottom line for the budget has not changed. $36,777 was the original budget. That did not change at all. So things that, had to do with like workman's comp and unemployment compensation, those items have been taken out and then redistributed, mostly went into mileage and services for the nurse practitioner, nurse abstractor. So where the item money was in for personnel, it is now in professional services.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Mr. Ash?
So you moved from part-time to on contract?
Yeah, so it's still, part-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you was getting benefits on being part-time?
No benefits.
So I'm trying to figure out what's the big difference then, why this change needed then?
Well, there was never any benefits, but there was money allocated for workman's compensation and unemployment. So that's not needed.
Okay.
So that's the main difference, going from like personnel to independent contractor. You don't get those things.
How long would your contract be then? Are you on a yearly?
Yes.
Basis? Okay. All right.
Yeah, so we would be hoping to renew the grant. It runs from October to September. So probably in the next couple of months, I'll have to rewrite it. Try to
But
get it again.
this budget here is putting you on contract, right?
I'm sorry.
This budget here is taking you from being a part-time employee to putting you on contract, correct?
Right.
So how would it go from October to September then?
Well, just the grant period itself,
Okay.
runs from October to September.
But I'm asking, are you on contract now?
I will be. Right. So I haven't been compensated at all.
Okay.
Yeah, so, because we're working on this issue, so once we get this straight, then I can be.
All right. We're good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is that it?
Well, to that point, just to be sure you're covered, when do you anticipate your compensation to begin?
Oh, after we approve this?
What date in particular? I mean, it's dependent on the outcome of the vote of the council?
Yes.
So, but you said October to September. If they approve this, then at the next meeting, then that would cover you for parts of March. How would you be compensated? What I'm saying is it needs to be made retroactive to the date in which you'll first begin to get paid. Otherwise, that payment wouldn't be authorized. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Okay.
If she's going to be paid in March, it has to be made retroactive to that date. That's all.
So that's
Oh, okay.
going back to my point. When does her contract start?
That's why I asked,
Yes.
because when she said October,
Right.
that took, your contract would actually start in March.
It would have to start March. It would have to go to like March till October or September. Well, really to October.
According
And start
to
a new
this.
contract from October to September
Yeah.
to get back on the schedule.
Right,
Yes.
right. Then, you know what, I think I was answering the question based on just the grant period itself. So then the contract for me.
We just want to make sure you get paid.
Yeah, I was trying to make sure
And
you
I
get
do
paid.
appreciate
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
really, I
yeah.
do. So whatever language we need.
Yeah, it just,
Okay.
when the motion is made, it needs to be made retroactive to the date of that meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we're ready, Mrs. Colvin. Ms. Colvin.
Madam Chair, can we go back to 12?
Yeah,
Okay,
we're ready.
all right. I think everyone has now received, at least via email, the contracts. So if you have your iPads or other devices. I did have a couple questions I wanted to ask about it. Number one, do you all consider this entity, I believe it's called Still Shores Media Incorporated, do you consider it a City of Gary business?
No.
All right. And Still Shores Media, does it operate in the City of Gary?
No. I believe you asked me these questions at the last...
Well, I didn't say Still Shores Media. Now I know it's a contractor.
Okay.
So Still Shores Media does not operate in the City of Gary?
You know, I need, if your question relates to whether or not they have a general business license and that kind of thing, I would need to check that.
I haven't asked that yet.
Okay, but I will check it though.
But I'm saying, does Still Shores Media operate as a business in the City of Gary? Is it
Do they have
performing,
a place?
is it
an
performing
office?
functions? Is it performing a business in the City of Gary?
It is a business.
Okay.
That is, we're contracted with. I mean,
And does it from time to time conduct its business inside of the Gary City Hall?
yes,
Okay? And so Still Shores Media conducts communications business, I take it, inside of Gary City Hall, and therein leads to the question you asked earlier, does Still Shores Media, having had a contract since February 4th or thereabouts
yes.
of 2020, did it apply for a business license in the City of Gary?
And I don't know right now.
Okay.
I can let you know.
All right, thank you. And one additional question, the second line of the contract, clearly it was originally intended to go through December 31st, 2020. That has been stricken, and in its place is written June 30th, 2020, with the initials SDJ. On what date was that changed to June 30th, 2020? Because there's no date beside the initial.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay. You have some more questions?
I don't think I have any. I don't know whether anyone else does, but I would love to get the follow-up on those questions as it relates to this document that we have been given. It looks like it was, I guess, agreed to on February the 5th. Now, he is paid retroactively for the month of January. I know that we certainly saw the presence of this gentleman, who I believe is the owner.
I would have to check the records, sir.
Okay, so his I would like to know if his payments began on February 5th, or does this memorialize work having already been conducted prior to February 5th when the contract was signed? So those are my questions. That's it for me, unless anybody else.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. All right. Okay. How about 15? What happened?
Is that now? Okay. (2020-15) is an ordinance authorizing the city to make a temporary loan to the fire pension fund and the police pension fund. This temporary loan will be coming from the general fund. As you all may be aware, generally the city does two temporary anticipation forms, one for the general fund and one for the pension fund. last year, or the last time they did a TAW for 2020, enough dollars were borrowed that will cover the pension fund for the fire and police. So what's happening now is the controller is requesting that dollars that have already been approved for the general fund be loaned on a temporary basis to the pension funds. This saves the city interest, so we didn't have to go through two different transactions. So we're asking for approval.
Madam Chair? So am I hearing you right? You saying we're loaning the pension fund money from the general fund?
On a temporary basis. But that
different.
loan is based on a temporary or a TAW that was already approved for the general fund. In other words, that TAW took into account that it would in fact be loaning money to the fire and pension funds.
So we have done a TAW for 2020 already?
As I understand it, yes. You had to do it back in December in order to go through the first half of the year.
I thought we started the process on getting two different numbers, but I didn't think we actually did the TAW.
If we hadn't done it, I don't know how, usually we need TAW monies at this
Oh,
time.
absolutely. I've been
Right.
asking where we at with cash, and, I
Right.
haven't heard anything, and I thought, we've been needing to do one. But the last time I thought when we
But if
came...
you'd like the controller to address that, then I can have her to do that.
Yes, because I thought last year we gave permission to the previous administration to give us, we gave them permission to go out and see what we can get from two different organizations there.
Right.
And they supposed to came back to us with which one they want to go with.
Okay. I'll
Which
have
gave
her
the best rate.
to address
But
that
I didn't know
question.
we had actually got a TAW, because I don't recall it being approved through the city council.
Me either.
Yes.
Because I think it was the Hammond Bund Bank and the Indiana
It was
Yeah.
two.
Fund Bank
Yes,
were
it
going to be
was.
the two that were being considered. And so these funds, Madam Chair, if it's okay.
It's okay, go ahead.
These funds are coming from where? And you may have already said this, I just want to make sure I'm clear.
This is a temporary loan from the general fund to the police and fire pension fund.
Is there, I think as Councilman Brewer alluded to, it would be nice to know what the cash on hand is in the general fund, since we're approving an amount that's probably almost equivalent to 7 or 8% of our total budget to be transferred in such ways. So I think if we could see the cash balance sheet, or however you
Sure.
appropriate way to present it, that would be helpful.
It kind of, startled me that we was transferring that type of money to them, because normally it's the other way around. Normally they borrow money from them to the general fund to support us. So
Normally we
this
have a
is kind
separate
of,
TAW for them.
right. Well, it's different this time to
Right.
see us now giving them money. And normally in the past several years since I've been here, we have always borrowed money from them. So I just like to know where we are as far as cash, but I don't recall us passing the TAW.
And remember, the idea is that the TAW that the city has is enough dollars to cover both what the city needs as well as the fire police pension. So it's a loan on both ends. It's not as if we already have the cash on hand. We have the ability to get it already. That's what the whole point is. But I will provide you the cash on hand amount, and I will check on the whether or not the ordinance was submitted for 2020 TAWs.
And I don't know if it's in our purview or not, but is there an update on the health of the fire and police pension funds? I mean,
Where they stand?
right. I mean, is this going to be a recurring challenge, or are they not in a good shape? I mean, is that something that we should be concerned about going forward?
The police and fire pension funds that are being covered by the TAWs are city funded. So to that extent, I can provide you the cash on hand for them, for those particular funds.
And if we could see, excuse me for interrupting, if we could see 2019 and 2018 for basically year-to-date comparables of those two funds, I think that would be helpful, because if there's a trend of recurring problems, or if things are going well before and now aren't going well, I think it would be prudent of us to try to figure out why there's a change in performance of those funds. Thank you.
That it? Any questions, comments from the public? Well, if there are no more questions,
I do have one more.
all right, you got another question?
So as it relates to, and I'm sorry, I want to go back to 12 because we did get a very helpful summary from
Go ahead.
Attorney Colvin, and thank you for doing that. And I had a chance to look at it. But I guess what I'd be curious of, we've been talking about everything being revenue neutral. And I want to make sure that that's correct and that we're including whatever the savings are from not paying folks benefits and
The
health.
controller did a spreadsheet
Okay.
that I can provide to you.
Okay, that shows the total amount of new dollars and then what's going out. And I just would lastly say that, look, I mean, on the communications director role, that this is not personal. And I also want to say that I know that people have raised issues about what happened prior to January 1, 2020. And that falls on deaf ears with me because I was not here before January 1, 2020. So the fact that this body or folks in this body didn't complain about, certain positions being allowed to be held by folks who didn't live in the city, I don't care. So I'd rather not ever hear that again as a rationale for why I should be okay with this position being moved from a full-time position to a contractual position. Secondly, look, I don't
think I said that, Councilman.
I don't think you said it. I want to be clear. Attorney Coleman, but they should remain nameless, those who made that argument to me. And I would also say that we have to take pride in being residents of this city. And I think to the question that the chair of the committee asked, is there not one in all of Gary who can serve as an effective communications director? And secondly, are we not worthy enough for one to consider moving to the city of Gary if they want to be our spokesperson? I mean, I think, people, I understand, right? We want to look for talent, we want the best talent, but I just don't understand how one can be the spokesperson for a community they don't live in. That's counterintuitive to every notion of logic I can come to. And so it's nothing for me personally against Mr. Gonzalez or his company. But I will say that we either, as I alluded to earlier, we're either going to have a standard or not as it comes to residency. We're doing the census right now. I'm afraid of what those numbers are going to look like. And someone might say, oh, that's just one position, that's just two positions. That's way above our median income. And so for us to grow this city, we have to encourage, incentivize, top down, people living here, being a part of this community, adding to our numbers. And if we can't do that from City Hall, how on earth am I supposed to convince people to move to this city? And you want me to approve an exception to the rule. And I in no way buy the argument that this is about efficiency. Sure, it's in his economic interest to make theoretically $15,000 less and maybe even $20,000 less with benefits if I don't have to pick up and move to Gary, but also I can work for a lot of other places. And we hope there's no conflicts in working for a lot of other places. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not personal, but that I'm going to be tough on residency as it relates to the ordinance and full-time and part-time employees who are working for this city. Because if we aren't going to do it, then we should just give up and just say live wherever you wish. And I just wanted to add that, and for the committee members and other council members to hear why I have asked so many questions about it. Thank you.
Councilman Brown?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
No problem. The supportive service position here is the special police. How many officers do we have on that detail now?
One,
One, so this will be a second one?
yes.
Is both of them at the same pay?
This one is a lower. The
This one.
other one, I think, is 36.
And what does the data analyst person do?
That position is one that is in the economic development area, and what we're attempting to do is use data to drive our economic development efforts. What kind of businesses do we want to put in a particular area, who the clientele might be, use the demographics the same way that businesses use demographics to determine where to locate. That person is charged with that responsibility.
And this is also a contract position also?
No, this is a salary position.
Does he live here in the
Pardon me?
city of Gary?
Yes.
He does?
And are there, I'm sorry,
I'm finished. Thank you.
are there any other cities, entities that he's providing planning services for?
This is for the planning director?
Yeah, I'll move to the planning director, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure, but I can certainly find out.
So I
Since he's
think-
on contract, that's possible.
Right, and I think we should know those kinds of things.
Well, I do. but
Right,
I'll
that's
find
okay.
out for you.
Yeah, because that's, to me, I mean, you just never know what's going to happen, but, as he, theoretically, right, absent any prohibitions in the contract, he could be providing services to cities that we're competing with for grants.
There are no
Theoretically.
provisions in
In the-
contract.
and there's-
But I will say this, though, just
Okay.
in general, about his employment. He has been working, works 4 days a week here, so really it would be difficult for him to have other clients. I'm not saying that he doesn't, but I'm just saying his work is almost full-time. You have the ability, of course, to have other clients if you're contractual, but in this particular case, I don't really think that he does.
Right.
But the contract safeguards against, I'll say, our property that he might develop on our behalf.
I would just say, too, that we have to be careful. I mean, look, when you talk about an independent contractor, I hire independent contractors. I can't tell them when to show up, when to leave. You can't give them
We've asked him to
specific
set
hours.
Specific hours.
You can't
so
give
that
them specific
The public
hours.
will know when he might be available to
And see,
them.
I think that's a problem, because an employee is different than an independent contractor. And that's been my concern with both of these proposed moves, because, listen, no disrespect to you at all, and I want to be clear about that, because I have the utmost respect for you. But these aren't independent contractors, these are employees. At the end of the day, when you take direction from a supervisor, when someone tells you where to show up and where to be, you're operating, certainly it's one thing if it's an event, if it's a special program, a special project, a grant, but when there's an ongoing relationship of you taking instruction from a supervisor, being somewhere for specific hours, that is sine qua non employee. And that's why, and honestly, I really think that moving both of these tries to make the argument, the claim that it's not just about making sure the communications director doesn't have to live here. But we put Mr. Jenkins in there who lives in the 1st District, right, then that softens it a little bit, and they're both making the same amount of money, and it gives the appearance of consistency. That's just how, I could be totally wrong, but that's how it looks to me. Because I don't think we'd be having this same conversation if the communications director lived in the city. But I'm not going to beat that dead horse anymore.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. That's it. Well, if there are no more questions or comments, that concludes this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a safe trip home. Thank you.
Right.
Let the rest of the